with the right to return, with reparations, with a Truth and Reconciliation Committee that needs to be implemented to prosecute war criminals. And yes, even people who have engaged in war crimes on the Palestinian side as well. Now, of course, when resisting against an apartheid regime, the crimes that you commit at the behest of resisting against an apartheid regime are going to be viewed differently than being one of the war criminals on the side of the apartheid regime. Like, lying is OP everywhere, baby. Not just in Turkey, not just in America, certainly in Israel as well. Lying is always and forever overpowered. Lying is OP, please nerf. Just the argument is always just nah. Like, everybody knows this is the case, except for Americans, because Americans don't actually, get to hear real, truthful information about what's going on in Israel. People in Israel know this is the case. They know this is the case, and either they like it, because they like what Netanyahu's doing, or they're further to the right than Netanyahu and they like that he's like ripping it up, or they hate it and they protest against it because they're like, I don't have an issue with like bombing Gaza, but I want my family members to, be extracted. So very strange stuff in this day and age where I feel like 95% of what I talk about is just me constantly going, this is just objectively untrue. Like what this government official, insert government official from anywhere, what this government official is saying is just undeniably incorrect. It's just a lie.
Washington to sit with Witkoff and with Trump to build a framework that will actually talk about what Israel needs are. And that's very important because at the end of the day, we have to bring back the security and the safety of our children.
Netanyahu has his own priorities. It looks as if the hostages are not the top of his priorities. And this is why things are not being done the way the majority of Israelis would have wanted it to be done.
Most of the hostage families are against resuming the war. Most of the Israeli public is against resuming the war. Why is your government doing it?
None of the so-called facts you just stated are correct. Some families are against. I don't judge the families, not at all.
Yeah, they're the pussy families, they just they are selfish. They want they do not want the war against babies of terror to continue. So-called facts. None of your so-called facts are correct. No, this is not the UN drawing guy. This is a different guy.
We have been trying for the past 3 weeks to have a sort of negotiation with Hamas. It's understood that they're not going to release hostages without staying in Gaza. Staying in Gaza is not something we are willing to let them do. Therefore, there's no other way.
You killed 50,000 Palestinians in Gaza. You've destroyed much of the Gaza Strip. If that hasn't been enough to eliminate and destroy Hamas, what on earth makes you think it's possible to achieve militarily now?
Yeah, it's because you can't eliminate an idea. It's not Hamas. You want to eliminate the Palestinian people. You cannot eliminate an entire people's need for emancipation. That's the problem. It doesn't have to be Hamas. You can call it anything else.
There's an American plan of President Trump saying
which has been widely rejected by Gazans and the Arab states.
I don't care. I care about
I don't care. I don't care. What are they going to do about it? We bomb? America says yes, bomb more. Okay, haha, terror babies, terror, babies of terror. Babies of terror!
It has been proven that only military pressure brings a good deal.
A year and a half of very intense war with a lot of civilian casualties in Gaza shows that it's not possible to militarily alone defeat Hamas.
A year and a half under the Biden administration that forced us to fight Hamas with one hand.
You know what's kind of crazy, by the way? I was having a conversation with someone last night where I said the Palestinian literacy rate in the West Bank and Gaza is higher than the Israeli literacy rate. And he just would not believe me. I was like, look it up, man. Just Google it. Like, it's available. People can't believe it. Like, it's like one of my favorite facts to pull when talking to white supremacists, when debating or arguing with like a racist person, is to tell them that the highest educated population, like ethnic group in the United States of America, are Nigerians. They can't comprehend it, right? There's a material reason for it, but like they don't even want to scratch that. They don't even want to scratch the surface where they go, Nah, that's not the case because no way. It's true. And people get so mad. People get so mad about that. It's the same thing here. People don't want to believe it. They're like, I don't agree with you on the statement. The Palestinian literacy rate for adults across the board is 97.8, is 98%. But when I have this conversation with someone where I tell them that, they're like, there's just no way. There's just no way. I don't believe it. What leads you to believe that is, how can you object to a fact? I think broadly, one of the biggest issues nowadays is the fact that people just want to operate on vibes. They don't care. Yeah, it's because of the Haredim and isolated communities. Yes, that is part of the reason. Nice trivia, but what does that have to do with anything? The broader point that I'm making, listen to the point I'm making, which is that people, by and large, and educated people as well, like well-educated people, would rather confirm their biases than actually seek out the truth. And it is one of the most frustrating things that I encounter on a daily basis as a political commentator. It is incredibly frustrating. It is incredibly annoying. And I think it's alarming. We've gotten worse at like critically examining things and having an overall healthy hunger for the truth. We don't have it anymore. It is really, really shitty. And perhaps the reason why, especially in the United States of America, why we have this issue is because of this. The Israeli literacy rate for adults is 92%. The Palestinian literacy rate for adults is 98%. The American literacy rate for adults is 79%.
Are you comfortable with 400 people being killed a day, 500 people? Is that
You don't want to hear the answer from her. The answer is yes. Actually, the answer is no. She's like, I want it to be 1,000 people killed a day. I think that we're not killing enough children. We are simply not killing enough children, enough terror babies.
something that you're willing to countenance going forward to try and destroy Hamas?
This equivalence is absolutely absurd. You think I like that? You think?
Oh, you hate it. Oh, damn. She hates it, but she just knows it's just something that they gotta do, you know? Oh, how dare you? How dare you suggest that I enjoy the sights of baby murder? How dare you? I mean, it's really horrible that we have to do these things. We have to kill as many babies as possible. How dare you? I mean, you guys know the reason why I say this, by the way, the median age in 2020 in Gaza, I don't even know what the latest stats on this looks like, but the median age in 2020 in Gaza was 18, okay? 40% of the Gazan population is 14-year-olds or younger. They're killing children mostly. There's a reason why when you look at the stats, when you look at the actual stats of like who they're killing, whenever they bomb something, it's like mostly kids and women and the elderly. Close to 80%. It's it. Yeah, our greatest ally. Here it is. Israel recently committed the largest child massacre in its history. 200 children and 100 women were killed in one day. Altogether, about 400 civilians were killed. And the number of the dead is not yet final. These numbers are not reported in the Israeli media, and if they are, it's always minimized in an outrageous manner. The only time you hear these numbers get reported in Israeli media, as a matter of fact, that's also not true. What do you call it? Haaretz did report on it, like literally used that term. I think this might actually be a Haaretz article, as a matter of fact. But the only other channel that I saw in Israel report on the numbers was, I think it was like Channel 14 or something, like one of those pro Benjamin Netanyahu channels that reported on it by saying 400 terrorists dead. That's the crazy double standard. That's the crazy hypocrisy of Israeli media, which is that Israeli media will literally use the Hamas-backed Palestinian Health Ministry numbers whenever they want to talk about how many people that they killed, but they'll just say all of the people that we killed were terrorists. Do they even have free press? No, they don't. Of course they don't. They have a military censor.
Think I wanted that? Israel wish it was the 6th of October now. We didn't want this war. We were forced into this war, not just by Hamas, by 7 entities from Iran, from Hezbollah, from Syria, from Iraq, from Yemen.
You're in favor of resuming the war or against it?
It's not. My goat. There. Yay, look at that. Look who it is. Friend of the show. Friend of the freaking show. Dr. Ofer Kasif.
Oh, it's a genocide, and obviously I'm against it because I'm against any kind of war crime.
Your view is very much a tiny minority view amongst Jewish Israelis right now. Why are you losing the argument?
I don't think we're losing the argument. You know, in order to lose an argument, there must be a counter-argument. There's none. And you are right. It seems to be the majority, at least in the Knesset. I'm not so sure anymore about the streets. If you listen carefully to what I've been saying, you can see that there's no argument there. Only incitement, revenge, sentiments.
Remember when people were saying that your reporting was inaccurate, that Israel would never bomb Khan Yunis? Wait, what? Who said that my reporting was inaccurate? Of course, Israel blew up every hospital since the Al Ahli hospital bombing, the courtyard bombing that took place. Israel never actually gave one single piece of correct information on why it wasn't actually Israeli rockets that blew up the courtyard. Every single person that talked about the Al Ahli hospital bombing campaign and said that I was wrong to assume that Israel did it were objectively wrong. Israel blew up every hospital. Israel took over the Turkish Gaza Friendship Hospital, which was the only cancer ward in Gaza. They overtook it. They used it as a military station, and yesterday they blew it up after they were done with it. And they said, well, no one can use the hospital anyway because we had overtaken it militarily. When I began my conversion process still going, the first and most important lesson I learned from diaspora, and especially people who lived in Israel, was that the government always lies. That's just the standard. Yeah. I mean, every government lies. Every government lies. Of course governments lie. The Chinese government lies. The American government lies. The Turkish government lies. Every government lies. The Israeli government lies all the time as well. Just simply calling that out is not anti-Semitic. I would say that the Israeli government, on the other hand, lies in the most egregious ways possible, in the most like easily identifiably wrong ways possible. That's the major difference. Because there's no opposition in the Western world to the Israeli government's lies. They just never counter it. There are more critical reporting against the Israeli government in Israel than the United States of America. Our mainstream press is always running defense for Israel in ways that are more egregious than Israeli outlets. Israeli Zionist leftist media person Guy Meroz last night on Channel 14's talk show Hapatruatim. Now we need to focus on one thing only, to stop the war, to bring back the hostages. And then, as far as I'm concerned, then Netanyahu, can destroy all of Gaza. Oh, wow. I love that. Wonderful Israeli leftist here. No, the only Israeli leftists are the guys like Dr. Ofer Kasif, the Mezarvot people that are conscientious objectors. Dipshits like this, like liberal Zionists like this, also want death and destruction upon the entirety of the Palestinian people.
ועכשיו אנחנו צריכים להתרכז רק בדבר אחד, לא לבזבז זמן על בנט הצודקת, ולא לבזבז זמן על קטר גייט, שזה מעניין סליחה, לא נעים להגיד פה מה זה מעניין, להתרכז רק באיך, כנראה, הברירה היחידה, להפסיק את המלחמה, להביא את החטופים, ואחר כך שמצדי יהרוס את כל עזה.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Netanyahu can destroy all of Gaza once we get the hostages out. Nice, man. Thank you. That's the wokest guy in Israel.
Hatred, fear, that's not an argument.
How do you think you deal with the issue of Hamas? Because a lot of Israelis are concerned about the prospect of them remaining in power in Gaza.
It is a big problem, and we should find a way to make sure that Hamas is not in power in Gaza. Right now, we should bring back the hostages.
Great idea. It's called ending the occupation. That's it. You end the occupation, and there is no more need for Hamas to exist or any sort of military formation that will be antagonistic and, dare I say, violent towards Israel. You end the occupation, you end the resistance to the occupation, because Hamas or any other militant formation only exists against the apartheid state that is doing an occupation on Palestinians. Destroying Palestinian homes, destroying Palestinian lives. That's it.
Hostages, and it includes ending the war, and we must work with the international community and with all the partners that we have in order to find a way to oust Hamas from Gaza. Palestinians, Hamas. This must be done, but the priority now.
Like, this is it. You either kill every single Palestinian or forcibly ethnically displace them from the Gaza Strip and then also the West Bank, which is what these guys want at the end of the day, by the way. Make no mistake. They all want this. Some people will say, oh, I don't want this. But like post-October 7, a lot of the liberal Zionists that that kept talking about like how dangerous the West Bank settlers were and whatever are totally on board with permanent exterminationist policies, because there's no other way. There is no other way to stop this. There's no other way to, you can't convince people to like a military occupation that kills them. This is just not going to happen. That's not true. What's not true? Most Israelis aren't like that, though. I don't know, man. That's not nuanced. Oh, my God. Consistently since October 7, I have gone back on this broadcast and looked at Israeli polling on the matter. Consistently since October 7 for the past 16 months, where the Israeli occupying force has completely destroyed the Gaza Strip, the Israeli population that is segmented by their own demographic terms, not mine, as Jewish or Arab, Jew and non-Jew, Jewish Israelis, which comprise 75% of the Israeli population, want more death and destruction in Gaza, almost to like 90%. I agree with like 99% of your commentary on this, except, okay, I keep saying the average Israelis want Gaza burned. You keep saying the average Israelis want Gaza burned, and that's not true. Show me a poll that is inconsistent with that reality, and I will say I'm wrong. Israel in and of itself, regardless of the approval rating of the continued war, because here, this is the honest position, okay? Or not, this is the honest position, sorry. The guy that we just saw, the liberal Zionist position, the most woke position, the most woke, like, permissible position is we need to stop the war for now, which is not a genocide, it's just a war, to get every single hostage out. And then after that, you can burn it all to the ground if for all I care. That is the opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu within the confines of permissibility. There are real anti-Zionists in Israel. There are anti-Zionist Jews in Israel. I've basically interviewed all of them. I think the nuance here is that they just want Palestinians gone, not necessarily dead. Oh, sorry. Oh, I didn't understand. They just want to like force them out of the land, like ethnically displace them. Like they want to ethnically cleanse the land, but in a non-violent way, not in a way that that kills them all. So what happens when people don't want to leave? You keep saying average Israeli wants Gaza. Russian immigrants and Arabs and Africans are very much pro-Palestine here. Dog, what are you talking about? I already, what are you saying? I already mentioned that 25% of the Israeli population is non-Jewish, according to Israel's own demographics. 25%. Their attitude towards burning Gaza is very different than the Jewish Israeli population's overwhelming support for burning Gaza to the ground or mass exterminating and ethnically cleansing Gaza. There was a recent poll that came out also saying adding Russian immigrants into that equation is really funny. I don't think that I don't think that the Russian immigrants in Israel are not on board with what Israel is doing. That's crazy. Arabs and Africans, on the other hand, like the non-Jewish population in Israel, yes, they're not in support of what Israel is doing. This is true, but they're 25% of the population, and they're basically de facto second-class citizens. You know this already. You're an Israeli chatter that is in this community. You know, I know that like you can't get access to Al Jazeera anymore, but you still watch me, so you probably see it. Yeah. Oh, this is the thing that I was talking about. Yeah. 70% of Israelis support the second phase of the hostage ceasefire deal, right? 70% of the Israelis support the second phase of the hostage ceasefire deal. Having said that, okay, which would require the Israeli troops to pull out of Gaza. When asked directly about even Trump's plan of mass displacement of Palestinians, Israelis also have, Israeli Jews specifically have, the same exact attitude. The reason why they want to continue the ceasefire is because they want to pull the hostages out. Can you please give a definition of anti-Zionism in the context of not asking for the removal of people in Israel? Yes, I believe that currently, I look at things honestly, I believe that currently there is already one singular state. It's Israel. It is an apartheid state. Israel dominates the Gaza Strip and is doing a genocide on the Gaza Strip. Israel also has Bantustans in the West Bank. Israel has illegally occupied the West Bank since 1967, militarily. There's a shift happening here since Trump is in office. Right-wingers here are even turning on Netanyahu. I haven't seen that. But my point is that there is already one state, and the two-state solution has been a lie that right-wing Israeli governments and even centrist Israeli governments have basically been using to continue settling the West Bank, which is what they did. I think it was like 80,000 people living in East Jerusalem mostly in the 90s. After the so-called peace process, that number shot up in 2025 to 750,000. And not just in East Jerusalem, but East Jerusalem and just West Bank proper. 750,000 Jews live in the West Bank. 750,000 settlers live on occupied Palestinian territory. And that happened over the peace process, the so-called peace process, as every single government kept kicking the can down the line over and over again. So the notion of a two-state solution would require 750,000 settlers to be removed. That is never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. You have to be realistic. So the anti-Zionist position that I have as a one-stater is to implement by force, if necessary, a singular, solitary, secular state. And this position is not necessarily popular amongst Palestinians, and it's not necessarily popular amongst Israelis either. But it is my position. You can have a disagreement with that all you want. With or without the right to return? Yes, of course, with the right to return. With the right to return, with reparations, with a Truth and Reconciliation Committee that needs to be implemented to prosecute war criminals. And yes, even people who have engaged in war crimes on the Palestinian side as well. Now, of course, when resisting against an apartheid regime, the crimes that you commit at the behest of resisting against an apartheid regime are going to be viewed differently than being one of the war crimes, the war criminals on the side of the apartheid regime. But having said that, yes, that is what needs to happen. Now, I personally think that is also incredibly difficult to ever implement. But there is no other way out of this, in my opinion. There's just no other way out of this. So if you ask me what I think should be done, that's what I believe. The thing that obviously stops this from happening is the fear that Israelis have, Israeli society has, specifically Israeli Jews by and large, that this would mean that there are more Palestinians there and more non-Jews there than Jewish citizens. And therefore, they will democratically do the same thing that Israel's been doing to the Palestinians for the past 76 years. They will forcibly repress and oppress and destroy and kill and ethnically cleanse all Jews in the region. That has not ever happened throughout history, with one exception, which was the Haitian Revolution. That has never happened throughout history. That did not happen in the abolition of slavery, which is like probably the closest comparison that you can present in terms of the 76 years of occupation. I'm going to come off as a flat earther, but I don't think the polls are accurate on how Israelis feel. They're just libs who are slow as going, more and more broke. Shit's expensive, man. I can't even afford the top of the hours. Okay, well, don't worry. I don't run top of the hour ad breaks any longer anyway. I mean, the Haitians didn't enslave the white people. They killed them. Yes, even with Haiti, that's an oversimplification. I agree. But I'm saying that like mass violence in the aftermath of a revolution historically has only happened in one instance, one successful slave revolt, which was the Haitian Revolution. The Nat Turner Rebellion took place in the United States of America. But in the aftermath of the abolition of slavery, what happened? Were there roaming gangs of newly freed black men and women that were massacring and enslaving white people? No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen in Algeria. No, it did not happen in Algeria. That's not a comparison either. It did not happen in Algeria. People voluntarily left Algeria because they did not want to live in Algeria. And it didn't happen in apartheid South Africa, and it didn't happen in Ireland either. But the reason why I use the abolition of slavery is because that is one of the closest systematized versions of harm that is like that's genocidal, close to a genocide, or in some ways might even be considered worse, right? That's the reason why I use that as an example. What usually ends up happening in this process is that like the same violent, rabid settler groups will basically continue doing clan-style violence upon the Palestinians, and they need to be dealt with through the criminal justice system. That is the most likely outcome here.
This is not in power in Gaza. Right now, we should bring back the hostages, and it includes ending the war, and we must work within...
Hasan, couldn't these settlers just fall under the leadership of a new Palestinian state? No, dude, they would never... that would never happen. That is what is supposed to happen right now. Like the Palestinian position right now, the Hamas position on this and the Palestinian resistance position on this is 1967 boundaries, which is not objectionable. That is appropriate. That's the basis of the two-state solution. How will you get to the 1967 boundaries? That means 750,000 Israeli Jews, some of the most rabid, some of the most right-wing, some of the most insane members of Israeli society that are violent expansionists, exterminationists, that basically are the Jewish KKK. Those guys are going to leave? No, of course not. And Israel weaponizes them anyway. While the broader Israeli society pre-October 7 might have looked at these settlers as welfare queens who are just like living off government dollars as they suffer. You know, liberal Israeli society hates the settlers because they're uneducated, filthy, whatever the they say in Israel. You know, look to Ethan Klein's earlier vlogs from Israel to find out more about what liberal Zionists and Israeli society thought about West Bank settlers. He was, you know, way more aggressive in the way that he talked about West Bank settlers than I have been. Okay, those guys are not leaving, and the Israeli government knows that they're not going to leave. The Israeli government has sent them there. The Israeli government uses them to create valid security concerns for our citizens. That's the whole point.
We're going to end this now.
How are you going to end
You're
it?
going to conquer Gaza.
You're not good.
We're going to conquer Gaza, and we're going to work together with our American allies in starting the Trump plan for
Ethnic cleansing. But a lot of people would say.
A lot of people would say, I don't care about what other people would say.
The fighting in Gaza is having a devastating side effect on some Palestinian communities in the West Bank. Activists say dozens of new Israeli outposts have sprung up across the territory since the war in Gaza began. As CNN's Nada Bashir reports, many Palestinians now believe they have only one option left: to move.
For decades, Palestinian shepherds have faced threats and violence at the hands of Israeli settlers. Dozens of rural farms like this one have already been abandoned as a result. But such violence is only increasing. This is just one of several incidents documented by Israeli NGO B'Tselem over recent months. The organization says dozens of settlers descended on the occupied West Bank.
Yeah, this is now we're moving on to the other side, the Israeli apartheid, and what it looks like to live under the Israeli apartheid in the West Bank. When you look at Gaza, that's what a genocide looks like. When you look at the West Bank, that's what pogroms under an apartheid looks like. This is a systematized version of violence that is outsourced to the most rabid psychopaths that you have ever seen. It's as though the American government is working side by side with the Klan in the Reconstruction to dominate the newly freed black men and women.
Village of El Mania in mid-February, attacking homes, farming equipment, and even residents.
Yeah, Palestinians leave as Israeli outposts spring up is such a disgusting way to approach the subject matter. No, Palestinians are being forcibly removed from their land illegally by rabid terrorists who are backed by the government. That's what's going on. They're not leaving. They're not voluntarily leaving. They are experiencing pogroms. They're experiencing ethnic cleansing. I don't have any sympathy for anyone that doesn't recognize this. The funny thing is, when I went with political activists to the West Bank, they denied our entry of 300 people. While settlers killed Palestinians there, we aren't allowed to come and see. Yes. And of course, the Israeli... It's not just that either. Israel settlers from margins of the mainstream, the Listening Post. This is, for the record, why I appreciate the activists that still, regardless of whatever their opinion is on Israel, the Israeli Jewish activists that put their bodies in front of this process, I still think are important. If they're saving one Palestinian family, that's still good. You just got to work with who you have. You got to work with the tools at your disposal.
While Israeli police forces demolished the outpost established in the village by settlers, B'Tselem says the outpost was later rebuilt that same day. Dozens of Palestinian herding communities have been impacted by the spread of outposts like this one, essentially undefined settlements, usually made up of small structures or caravans. Israeli anti-settlement watchdogs Peace Now and Kerem Navot say at least 49 outposts were established in the months following the October 7th attacks, an increase of nearly 50% since the beginning of the war in Gaza. As of last December, the groups estimate that herding outposts covered almost 14% of the occupied West Bank. That's an area of land roughly twice the size of Gaza. And that's in addition to approximately 150 officially recognized settlements that have already been...
I really care about Palestine, and I hope you cover it a lot, but every time I click on your channel, it's so off and on. It's important, and there's a lot of other important things too. Maybe I'm just unlucky when I click here. Yes, because I don't just cover the Israeli government's actions in Palestine. I'm live for 8 hours a day. If you think that this is the only thing that I cover, you're wrong.
Bank. Both outposts and settlements are considered illegal under international law. Satellite imagery analysed by CNN shows how rapidly herding outposts have spread, as well as the gradual development of new roads connecting the outposts to established settlements. And in
what are outposts? Tents? No, outposts are the ways in which settlers expand into Palestinian territory. Here's how it works. You go and you mark a house, oftentimes the Star of David. That means that that house that has Palestinian people living in it needs to be evacuated immediately. Otherwise, they will die. And sometimes they do die. They go in, they burn the house down with Molotov cocktails. They beat the shit out of people. They oftentimes have guns. They shoot at the houses. They shoot at the Palestinians that are living in their own homes in the West Bank. Then the Israeli occupying force comes in. The Israeli occupying force doesn't come in to stop the settlers. The Israeli occupying force, as a matter of fact, comes in and militarily defends the settlements. In the aftermath of that process, once they've successfully ethnically cleansed the Palestinians from that land, they build outposts. Outposts is a militarized version of a home. The reason for why they build these outposts is to segment off different areas of Palestinian land from one another. Because once you build those outposts, then the Israeli government comes in and builds roads that Palestinians can't drive on. Remember, this is their own land, internationally recognized as occupied Palestinian territory, illegally occupied by the Israeli government. So they build compounds that cut across Palestinian land deliberately, and then they build roads across Palestinian land deliberately, and then they don't let the Palestinians drive on those roads. All of this is done in an effort to trap Palestinians into Bantustans, a similar concept that existed in South Africa as well during the South African apartheid. Every step of the process, the Israeli government militarily protects the settlers engaging in this act of terrorism, because the Israeli government itself is a terrorist government. The Israeli government itself is a fascist government. Outposts are built to envelope Palestinian lands in the same way it was done to Gaza, hence the name the Gaza envelope. Yes, the Gaza envelope is the kibbutzim that are the first line of defense surrounding the Gaza Strip.
In some cases, cutting Palestinians off from the land that they depend on. In the northern village of El Farisiya, the local farming community has now been almost entirely depopulated. Back in February, we met the Daraghma family, at the time still desperately clinging on to their land. These hills are full of areas for our animals to feed, but now there are settlers over here, over there, and another one over there. We can't access these areas, Ahmed says. The settlers...
I truly don't know what to say to my coworker who says B'Tselem and the other human rights watch organizations are anti-Semitic. Is your coworker Jewish even? Like, Jewish or not doesn't really matter. They're delusional and they're a fascist. But it is pretty funny because I hear this a lot from people who aren't even Jewish, where they just like think that they know more about Judaism than actual Jews. They know more about Israel than Israelis. They know more about Jews than Jews themselves. They feel so confident in saying, well, you're not a real Jew. There's nothing funnier than entertaining the hubris of ultra-Zionist Gentiles who think that they literally are more Jewish than Jewish people, you know, because they're more pro-Israel than Jewish people. Yes, he's an Israeli who works for the... Dog, he works at Elbit. Like, wait, what? Yeah, no shit. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, no shit. He says B'Tselem is anti-Semitic, and Human Rights Watch is anti-Semitic. He's like, hey man, can you please do something about my coworker? Yeah, no shit, dude. You're at the baby killing factory directly for the baby killing government. You know, Elbit Systems is a Israeli weapons manufacturer.
Settlers come to scare our sheep and frighten our children. We've had to stop going up on the hills with our sheep, fearing they will come after us. Ahmed's family says they have lived here for generations. The land, not only their home, but also their livelihood. We've always lived here, Hussein says. Our whole lives are here. Where else can we go? Since filming, members of the Daragma family told CNN they were left with no choice but to abandon their homes. Acts of violence by settlers from nearby outposts simply too much to bear. Activists say outposts like those around the village of Al-Farisiya are established with the purpose of laying claim to Palestinian land and pressuring Palestinian communities to flee. Through threats, physical violence, and direct attacks on resources, including livestock and farming equipment, often with the protection from both the military and the state. CNN has reached out to the Israeli government about allegations of its support for illegal outposts, but has not received a response. The Israeli military told CNN that it condemns violence in any form and that police are tasked with handling any Israeli violations of the law. When asked about new roads we saw being developed around another nearby village, the IDF said the land had been seized for, quote, operational needs, adding that the route is intended for use by security forces and that it has been developed in accordance with military orders.
It's important to understand that this project, this herding outpost campaign, or this project is a national project, it's a state project. This is not a project which is initiated by individuals. It's a project which the state of Israel is standing behind it, it's budgeting, is facilitating, is protecting it.
The Ministry of Settlements, for example, has budgeted for outposts which it calls young settlements, previously saying funds were carried out in accordance with all laws. But the displacement of Palestinian herding communities is just one part of a deepening crisis in the West Bank. The UN says more than 40,000 Palestinians have been forced from their homes since February by an expanding Israeli military operation, with Israel's defense minister calling on the military to prevent the return of those displaced, stoking fears around the potential for a full annexation of the territory and crushing hopes for a pathway to a viable Palestinian state. Neda Bashir, CNN, in the occupied West Bank.